This is a beautiful watch. I know I'm not supposed to say that. I'm supposed to be critical and say things like, Grand Seiko messed up this time, or you won't believe how bad it is, or some other clickbaity BS to get views. And I will be critical. This watch does have issues, but also I like watches. I notice when something is interesting and special, and I think this SLGB003 is kind of great. And you know what? I'm not ashamed to say that. This new Spring Drive UFA is on loan from Exquisite Timepieces because they sell Grand Seiko watches and Tudor watches and Longines and dozens of brands. And they don't mind being associated with this YouTube channel, so that's something we do not have in common. This watch is the SLGB003 UFA, aka the Ice Forest, because by Japanese law, Grand Seiko watches must have a nature-based name related to their dials. I haven't studied watch law in years, but I'm confident about this. The Ice Forest was announced last April 2025 and was, and still is, one of only 3 UFA watches from Grand Seiko. There's a platinum one, this titanium one, and steel. UFA stands for ultra fine accuracy because this watch and the movement in it represent another leap for Grand Seiko and Spring Drive movements, and it has to do with the accuracy. Guess what? It's fine. Ultra fine. This one here is the titanium watch, or according to Grand Seiko, it's high intensity titanium. It's 37 millimeters in diameter, 11.4 millimeters thick, 44.3 millimeters long, and it has 20 millimeter drilled lugs. It has 100 meters of water resistance with a screw down crown, and it weighs only about 100 grams on the full bracelet, which is pretty light. The movement is the Spring Drive Caliber 9RB2, which has 72 hours of power reserve, and a lot more going on with it. I'll get into all that about the movement because if you don't know about Spring Drive movements, you should. And if you do know about Spring Drive movements, you should know more, or you should know again. $11,400 is the price for this watch. Yes, we dinosaurs. We remember when Grand Seiko Spring Drive watches were $5,000 10 years ago. But gasoline is also way more expensive, so it all evens out. You know, I was expecting 37 millimeters to feel too small, but there are a couple things here that I think make this work on my low-intensity 7-inch wrist. First, it's got a bracelet. Bracelets make watches feel and look bigger than they would on a strap. That's not unique to this watch or this design, but there are also some interesting parts of the design and the proportions of this watch. See, this watch is part of the Evolution 9 line of Grand Seiko watches. The Evolution 9 watches debuted a few years ago, and there are some design elements of the Evolution 9 watches that I've been critical of. The chopped off hour hand, for example. I wish it came to a fine tip like the hour hand does on some other Grand Seiko watches. I'm still not a fan of this hour hand. And then there's the wider bracelet. That's also part of the design language. On larger watches, I'm not really into it. A 22 millimeter bracelet on a 40 millimeter watch, it just seems a bit off to me. But here, we have a 20 millimeter bracelet on a 37 millimeter watch, and I like this. It gives the watch more presence and strength than something like even a 18 or 19 millimeter bracelet might. It's amazing what a little girth can do. So I'd say don't let the 37 millimeter case scare you off. If 38 and 39 millimeters work for you, this probably will too. Like I said, the watch is light, about 100 grams thanks to the titanium. But wait, there's more. Something that people have been criticizing Grand Seiko about for years, and something the brand has finally added to its non-dive watches for the first time. An adjustment system in the clasp. Now you can all kind of just shut up already. You won't, because this is the internet, but you can. In the clasp is a system that has 4 adjustment positions, with about 2 millimeters between each of them. It even ratchets tight, but it's kinda actually weird to operate. Unlike every other system I've seen like this from other brands, instead of pulling the bracelet away from the clasp to adjust the length, you push it into the clasp, you push it towards the clasp. I find this pretty awkward to use, but it do what it's supposed to do, and despite the weird user experience, I'd rather have this than not. Now the Ice Forest dial, you just know that Grand Seiko has some story about it, and you try to guess if Grand Seiko wrote what I'm about to read, or I wrote this description as a joke on watch marketing cliches. To the east of the Shinshu Watch Studio, the Kurigamine highlands transform into breathtaking winter landscapes, where frost-covered trees stand in silent beauty. Inspired by this natural wonder, the intricately textured dial of the SLGB003 captures the essence of these ice-laden forests through expert finishing techniques that create pale blue tones that are subtle yet striking in their presence. I didn't write that. I couldn't write that. That was all Grand Seiko. I'm sure that language works for a lot of people, but I'll bet they're not the kind of people who might watch this channel. I have great reverence for nature. I don't have a great reverence for marketing, but I do have a reverence for good design and fine watchmaking, and I do think this dial is gorgeous. It's amazing. Grand Seiko is just so good at this, and it goes great with the markers and the hands, despite the fact that I still do not prefer the stubby tip of the hour's hand. But overall, everything under this crystal is stunning. And there's another welcome change that Grand Seiko recently made on some of their watches, another change that people have been asking for years, the Spring Drive Power Reserve Indicator. Until recently, the Spring Drive Power Reserve Indicator was on the dial of most Spring Drive watches, often around 7 o'clock. A lot of people felt like the indicator ruined what were otherwise gorgeous dials, and I get it, I partially agree with that. So recently, Grand Seiko started putting the Power Reserve Indicator on the backs of the movements, and it's great. I like this a lot. It keeps the dial clean and it looks really good on the movement. And from a practical sense, you should not be winding your watch while it's on your wrist, so there's really not a strong need to have the indicator on the dial anyway. Oh, Zaratsu polishing. I can't believe I made it this far in the video without saying Zaratsu. It's good. I especially like the finishing on the case chamfers that run along the sides of the case from lug to lug. Now about UFA, this is a UFA watch. So back in 1969, Grand Seiko started a line of watches called VFA, very fine adjusted. They were mechanical watches that were accurate to 2 seconds per day, which made them probably the most accurate mechanical watches in the world at the time. Grand Seiko stopped making these watches in 1975, and this UFA Spring Drive watch, this is kind of the next generation of those highly accurate Grand Seiko watches. This watch with its 9RB2 Spring Drive movement is accurate to just 20 seconds per year. That's plus or minus 0.054 seconds per day. That makes this about 10 times more accurate than most quartz watches. Like I said, this thing is ultra fine. Like mechanical watches, Spring Drive movements store their energy in springs and have systems for releasing that energy in a predictable way. And like quartz movements, Spring Drive movements use the oscillation of a quartz crystal to regulate time. It's really at the escapement where the tech collides. See, Spring Drive escapements aren't anything like Swiss lever escapements that tick back and forth. Technically, it's not really called an escapement. Grand Seiko calls it a tri-synchro regulator. And the tri-synchro regulator is inspired by the wind as it moves through the pine trees near Mount Fuji. I'm just kidding. They don't say anything like that. This escapement system actually uses an electromagnetic braking to control the release of the energy from the spring. And because it's a brake, it's not ticking. There's a constant release of energy which gives the Spring Drive seconds hand a perfectly smooth glide. People talk about the smooth glide of high beat mechanical movements, but nothing is like the seconds hand of a Spring Drive movement. Or maybe a fully electronic watch will also do this, or like the plugged-in clock in your high school classroom, but nothing other than that. And maybe some electric clocks that I've seen at swimming pools, but nothing other than that probably. This is a beautiful watch, and I'm not ashamed to say that. It's pretty interesting, it's great to wear, and it's not an Omega, a Rolex, or a Tudor, and it doesn't look or behave like any of those, and for that, we are grateful. And of course, the SLGB, it reminds me of my childhood spent just east of the Shinshu Watch Studio in the Kurigamine Highlands, where frost-covered trees stand in silent beauty.